Okay, so hello everybody. How are you all doing? I hope you're all well. Thank you for joining today's session. Obviously titled Making Intelligent Decisions in Financial Services with Microsoft Fabric. We have a jam-packed agenda today, so while some of the other attendees are trickling in, I'm just going to get started with a quick intro. Today's session is obviously around all the trends of data analytics and financial services, but it's more specifically how financial service businesses can utilize that data to evolve their business. A little bit of webinar housekeeping before we begin. Please note that the event will be recorded and it will be uploaded to our company's YouTube channel, made available on our website. If you do not wish for your audio to be included in the recording, please stay muted. I think we've got that turned on anyway. And any questions you have, please post them in the chat. We've got a couple of polls throughout the session as well, so please do try and answer them so that we can understand where you are on your journey. And we will also be sharing the recording, which will be uploaded onto our website after the event. Any unanswered questions, we can obviously follow up with you directly after the webinar. So before we get into the main part of the content, we just wanted to run through the agenda, do some introductions, who our speakers are today. Firstly, I wanted to take you through a bit about us. I imagine most of you don't know who Transparity are, what we do, our relationship with Microsoft. Then I'll be handing over to the very lovely Dominic, who will be taking you through the common data challenges in FSI, what builds a good data culture. And then finally handing it over to Luke, who'll be talking all things tech, how to build a successful data strategy, and finishing off on how we can extract funding to push a project forward. But please do stay till the end, because we'll be taking you through an opportunity to leverage two funding programs, which will take you on your first free of charge Fabric step. So a quick round of introductions, I think. So my name's Stuart Selby. I'm one of the financial services account execs at Transparity. We are verticalized here, so the understanding that we have of the industries that our customers work in is tailored, and the message is tailored certainly, and the services are tailored to very much your verticals. My role is really very much about connecting our customers, prospective customers, to our amazing technical teams. But also with Microsoft as well, because there'll be a number of people that don't have that access to Microsoft and the level of integration and collaboration that we do. So that's me. I'm now going to hand over to Luke for a quick intro.
Cheers, Stu. Yeah, hi everyone, I'm Luke, and I head up the data element of the data and AI practice at Transparity. So just over 35 data engineers and consultants within the data element, and really our sort of core delivery and focus is the delivery of modern data platforms using tools like Fabric. Over to you, Dom.
Yeah, hi everyone, I'm Dom Tomey. So I'm a senior specialist for data, apps and AI at Microsoft. I've been in the data management space for probably about 20 years now. I work across a variety of different sectors, including FSI. So really excited to be working with Transparity on today's session. We partner very closely with them. They're really what I would class as a trusted advisor for us and for our clients. So hopefully today will be a really, really impactful session for you.
Excellent, thanks, Dom. So moving forward, a bit about us. Conscious that you might not know exactly who we are. Transparity, we have to do this, but we are the UK's most accredited Microsoft partner, meaning that we have the most and the highest level of accreditations across the entire Microsoft suite of products, including data and AI. But we're proud to hold all 6 of the partner solution designations you can see on the screen, along with Azure Expert MSP status. It puts us really among the most credited Microsoft partners in the world. But with today's session being focused on data, if you do want to discuss anything else that you can see on the screen there, whether that's AI, Copilot, infra, app innovation, modern work, and the security that wraps around it, please do reach out to us, because we'd be keen to speak to you there as well. From a technical credibility perspective, we're not just turning up with an unguided message here. We have delivered more Microsoft funded data platforms than any other partner in the last 12 months. So like I said earlier, please do stick around to the end, where we'll share how your business can apply for a completely free of charge data platform MVP. And then in terms of industry experience and knowledge, we really do have a very strong financial services footprint. We work with a lot of Microsoft Enterprise and SMC customers across all of the main sub verticals, including insurance, private equity, banking, and also the kind of broader, more niche players in the FSI world. And I'm going to hand over to Dom, who's going to guide you through what it takes to build a trusted data culture and some of the challenges that we see in the industry. Over to you, Dom.
Thanks, Stuart. So yeah, I thought I'd start off really, having worked at Microsoft for now 15 months and working with a bunch of customers, there's kind of a typical theme that I'm seeing running across a lot of the problems that people are facing. So I thought I'd just, first of all, start talking about some of the kind of data challenges that we're finding in financial services at the moment. Security and compliance, I think that's probably number one on a lot of people's lists at the moment, that need to adhere to those complex regulations and getting the right data in the right place at the right time so that you can accurately report on that element of your business is highly important, and a major data problem for a lot of organizations with the evolving landscape that brings. There's also, because of the evolution of technology, what we're seeing is there's loads of people that have got technology constraints on integration because they've built from the ground up when the business first was kind of incepted, going through into this kind of modern world where everybody's talking about AI and all of that kind of weird and wonderful cloud operational stuff that you can do now. Data quality is always an issue. That kind of comes from two elements. If you've got humans interacting with your data internally, you're going to have data quality problems. Like I've heard stats that say that a typical CRM, you get kind of 5% degradation on the quality of that data per month. So making sure that you're kind of keeping on top of data quality is a very important activity. Ensuring that clean, consistent, governed approach is highly effective, especially within your industries. And then we're talking about, things like data governance and lineage. So, who's going to be the owners of the data that we have within our organization? Who's using the data that we have within that organization is highly impactful if you get a good understanding of that. And then obviously, one of the reasons I joined Microsoft in the first place is, I don't know if any of you have heard about this thing called AI, but, more organizations like yourselves are probably trying to, move into utilizing AI to drive efficiencies, get better, accurate information. And then there's that data literacy and culture. So upskilling and making sure that the business can have access to the data, use the data. The word data democratization or self-service is a hugely important topic that most of the organizations that we talk to raise. And there's some interesting stats, around some of those topics. So siloed data, I'm not going to go through all of these, but 63% organizations are struggling to unify that data and their analytics in one environment. 42% are finding integrating legacy systems with new tech is a big barrier. Everybody wants to become AI ready. As I said, it's on the tip of everybody's tongues. Even my children are using AI on a regular basis. So you want to make sure that you're keeping up with your competitors around that topic. And then, as I said, data quality issues, there's so many stats out there about, the information that your clients are providing you with, the information that you're collating as a business. And really, there's steps that you need to go through to make sure that ultimately any reports or any information or anything that you're building out in terms of innovation around your business is done with the right insights. And you can only do that with good quality data. So, in terms of problem solving when it comes to having a modern data platform, I think, I've covered off some of those themes, but, we have the siloed data, that lack of trust, that manual reporting, and that lack of scalability. What we're aiming to do and to support organizations with is to solve those problems. How can we help you unify your sources, enable those cross-platform insights and consistent decision making routines? How can we help you improve the trust within your data, give you that full understanding where data's being used, who's using it, removing that kind of cottage industry way of reporting that is typically done through Excel in particular different job spheres, to drive consistency through your business. And then there's that kind of manual reporting side of things that you can, again, leverage AI with to automate processes, deliver faster, and provide that data democratization that you might want as a business that can scale. You want your business to be able to scale as fast as the market needs it to, and as fast as you want to grow. So that's some of the kind of problems that we're trying to address in terms of accuracy throughout the business. Now, there's a whole bunch of stats out there again, but one of the ones that always resonates with me is that when you're trying to build a report as an organization, most organizations, according to the analysts that we've been speaking to, they have to leverage around about 16 different applications to ensure that they're going to be able to get the right data to build out a report. But as well as that, you need about 25 different data sources to generate those customer insights. So if you think about how many systems you've got across all of your various different departments, such as sales, marketing, HR, IT, finance, and operations, that's a lot of activity that needs to happen. And predominantly, most people want to kind of move towards doing that within one environment, so it kind of makes it easy. Now, 87% of organizations that we've spoken to, they think that AI is going to give them that competitive edge. And I'm sure that there's a few of you nodding here going, yeah, we need to use AI, or we're actually well ahead on AI to give you that competitive edge. But your AI is only going to be as good as your data. So, it's that thought process of, do you want to run before you can walk, or do you actually want to get everything fit for purpose and then build some really, really impacting bespoke AI leveraging applications or routines or automations or operational efficiencies to help your business get that kind of edge that you want? So I guess the question is like, how do you combat this? And really, this is why we're all here today. We've got this platform called Microsoft Fabric, which is, I always say, it's like the one-stop shop for helping you realize solving some of the problems to the challenges that I've just addressed. So we have the ability to be able to provide you with data governance, data quality. We have the ability to unify your data into one single place. We have the ability to be able to help you leverage AI, as well as all of the other fundamental things that you're probably already doing within Azure or whatever cloud platform that you may be using. But ultimately, Microsoft Fabric is designed to give you that one-stop shop, to enable you to leverage the data that you have within your organization in the most meaningful possible way. So eventually, you can then start to democratize that data, that information, those insights that you have out to the business via something like Power BI or whatever analytics platform that you may be using. It's ultimately about getting you ready to build these really powerful Gen AI experiences to help you enhance your data insights, analyze customer interactions. Yeah, the list is endless of what you can ultimately achieve. But we believe, and I think Transparity are fully on board with this, that OneLake serves as that connective tissue to help you start to build out these Gen AI apps that are powered by your data to provide you with the very best in class applications and routines that you can utilize to give yourselves that edge that you require. So really, that's what we're seeing in the market at the moment. It's all about providing you with faster access to data, trusted governed data, enabling you to have that single source of truth to drive really truly meaningful insights and the ability to demonstrate ROI within your organization. Making the technology pay for itself and give you that competitive edge. So I hope that was useful. I'm now going to pass you back to the team at Transparity to follow on.
Brilliant. Cheers, Dom. So obviously, I think Dom's obviously given you a great insight into the power of Fabric and really how it lays the foundations for that sort of being AI ready, that next era that's coming along. And actually, your AI is only ever as good as the data that underpins it. But in isolation, a technical solution like Fabric obviously can often have a bit of a lens or a steer towards potentially the use case or the function it's trying to help. So typically we see finance, for example, that are a big driver towards sort of data projects, that actually a technical solution in isolation can sometimes have a lens of their point of view and their challenges and doesn't necessarily encompass the whole organization. And that's really where a data strategy comes into play. So today we'll walk you through a few of the steps in terms of how does Transparity approach building winning data strategies for its customers. And we've touched already on some of the whys, so those harmful data silos that Dom was referring to, the lack of sort of integrity and quality within the data, and obviously sort of data security and governance being really prevalent, obviously in the FSI industry, but across every industry now, especially with obviously some high profile recent leaks of data, for example. So sort of we've approached the why, but how do we actually go and start to combat some of those through both a data strategy but also technical delivery as well. So we start at the modern data strategy piece. So later on I'll take you through some of the sort of the core pillars that Transparity uses when helping its customers formulate strategies. And then we go into the technical delivery side of things. We appreciate that there's a fine balancing point between developing an all singing, all dancing strategy, but then not actually technically delivering against it. And with the advent of AI and at the pace that that's moving, standing still isn't an option. You need to formulate a strategy, but also execute against it quickly as well. And that's really where that modern data platform deployment comes into place. And then ultimately it allows you to realize those use cases. So later on, we'll go through some of the typical sort of use cases that we see across the FSI industry. And then we get onto the final bit, which is really the data evolution, which might be your data platform expanding in terms of the data sources that it encompasses. So those 25 data sources that Dom referred to earlier, in order to get insight, maybe it's ingesting more of those, or maybe it's even going into the AI space and starting to explore that. I think it's important to know that the strategy is ever evolving, the technology is ever evolving, so your strategy needs to be as well. It's not a one and done effort, I'm afraid. So what does an actual robust data strategy look like? So the strategies that we build for customers are really based around these sort of key points. So obviously starting with the clear objectives and vision, and I touched on earlier that sometimes a technical solution answering one problem can have a lens of a particular function or area of the business that's demanded it at the time. So making sure that actually your strategy aligns with the overarching goals of the business, rather than it just being maybe a finance-led incentive, for example, but also ensuring that stakeholders are all on board as well. Time and time again, we see sort of the data strategy sitting and being owned by data or technical teams internally, but then not necessarily having the buy-in of the wider business. I think there's obviously an acknowledgement from businesses today that data is the lifeblood of a lot of businesses, and obviously the insights and the value that you can get from it. But formulating a strategy and involving those stakeholders from day zero is a really great way of getting them on board to really help sort of push and adopt the strategy across the business at all levels, rather than it just being a sort of data or tech focused piece. Data governance and compliance is often one that we see is overlooked and left until the end, but with tools like Fabric and its really close integration with tools like Purview, governance and compliance is actually there from day zero. You've not got to go and look out for other tools to go and to supplement that piece that's within Fabric itself. So having that within the strategy again means that you can make the right technical decision when it comes to the platform you're going to use, but also starts to get people on board in terms of, look, it's everybody's ownership for governance and compliance across the organization, not just a data or a technical function piece. Quality and integrity, again, Dom obviously referred to some of those challenges that we're seeing in the industry today. This is prevalent across every industry, the quality and integrity of the data, that actually, great, we're ingesting it into a modern data platform, but actually, is it accurate? Can we rely on it? Is it trustworthy? So again, a strategy that involves looking at the quality and integrity for a new lens and going, actually, let's assess this. Is this data fit for purpose for us to use? And if not, how do we combat that? Is that through changes to the source systems or improvements in the source systems, or does the data platform take on some of that responsibility to improve that quality and integrity? Architecture and infrastructure, obviously we're talking about Fabric today, which really is as Don was saying, a one-stop shop for all things data. It makes that sort of choice of technology and platform really easy because of that SaaS-based approach and everything being under one roof, from a data ingestion through to transformation, through to visualization, through Power BI, and then obviously onto the governance and security side of things through tools like Purview. Integration and accessibility. Time and time again, we see companies that have potentially maybe grown through acquisitions or have not necessarily had the luxury of a lot of time to implement solutions and systems, that actually the integration and accessibility of the data is often a common challenge that we need to overcome before we can even start to look at how we technically implement. But again, tools like Fabric, with a myriad of out-the-box connectors it's got, features like data mirroring and shortcuts makes some of those challenges disappear just because of the functions and ability that the tool has got. Analytics and data science, again, needs to be considered from day zero. So the data that you're landing, what is the real end goal of that? Is it to be AI ready? Are we looking at really leveraging that data for some of that more sort of advanced AI ML capability? And then data literacy and culture. I said obviously people have got a much more appreciation for the importance of data in their organizations, and obviously data literacy in the FSI industry is typically high given the nature of the industry. But again, that literacy and culture needs to be across every element of the organization. It's no good just being at the technical level that understands and believes in the strategy that we're trying to implement. How do we get that into every facet of the business? A bit like governance and compliance, security and risk management is often overlooked as well, given obviously the sensitive information in the FSI industry and the importance around security. That being the bedrock of your data strategy is as important as the governance and compliance piece as well. But also a robust data strategy should obviously include that collaboration and communication piece. This, like I said before, this isn't in isolation. This can't be done just by a technical delivery team. It has to take into consideration the rest of the business and obviously the challenges that they're having with data and the insights that they're potentially missing and want to get out of the data today. So obviously goes without saying that a robust data strategy then leads to a robust technical implementation that then obviously the business can ultimately benefit by. But the typical sort of common themes we see across the FSI industry in terms of why take on a data strategy is really that the sort of key top point there, making decisions based on data. Obviously, data-driven industry, we should be making informed, accurate decisions off the back of it, which also need to come quickly as well as a differentiator from your competitors. How can we quickly make decisions, informed decisions off the back of the data that we've got? And again, it then comes down to that sort of more, I guess, traditional reporting side of things. Tools like Power BI that can go and deliver dashboards to management levels and executives, for example, but it shouldn't just satisfy their reporting demands. It should be, again, across all persona types. So really important that data strategy takes into account all personas, not just whoever's shouting loudest for the data that they need access to today. And then we get into the typical benefits that we see in terms of reduced costs, not only from a platform side of things. Often we see incumbent data platforms that are in play that actually are moved to the cloud. It may even reduce costs. So moving to Fabric, the storage costs in there are in a totally different sort of realm compared to storage costs for a traditional database sitting on a SQL server that's got expensive disks attached to it. For example, storing terabytes of data within Fabric is a few £100 a month, for example, versus obviously a more traditional approach and the significant cost it has there, but also reduce cost in terms of potentially improving people's workload. So removing of manual data processes. I go into my CRM, I extract data from there into Excel, I then manipulate it. Removing those and automating those into a data platform, again, can reduce costs in terms of people actually having the time to spend analyzing and making insights and actions off the back of the data, rather than the 80% acquiring the data for the 20% time left to then analyze it and action upon it, which obviously then, efficient time management, ultimately job satisfaction. I don't think anybody enjoys going into source systems to extract data to then manipulate in Excel, and ultimately that reduces the risk as well in terms of those harmful data silos that Don was referring to earlier, removing that cottage industry so that one function goes and acquires some numbers from a source system, another does exactly the same, but they come up with two different answers that then leads to questions over which data is actually which data is the right answer, or if any, as the case may be, as obviously they're open up to manual processes. So at Transparity, we've got a mature data and AI strategy framework that we use across a number of our customers, and really it starts with 5 core pillars. It's no surprise, data and AI starts with the data pillar. So we typically engage with customers through sort of a workshopping period, so going out into the business and discovering actually what data exists in the business today. If you've got incumbent technical teams and data teams, they may have a really good idea of this already, but you'd be surprised at how many customers we sit down with and unearth really important Excel spreadsheets, for example, that have got really important data and decisions made off the back of them that lives on somebody's desktop, for example, or is hidden away in a OneDrive somewhere, that actually centralizing and putting the control and guardrails around that data, it could be a really important use case as part of the data and AI strategy delivery. And then we get onto platform. So we try not to focus too much on the tech at this stage, because we understand that we've got options like Fabric that are more than capable of delivering the majority of the use cases that we come across. But really, it's about understanding what are the use cases and how do they influence how we use that platform. Is there a real time need for data? Do we need data down to the millisecond, or is actually there a bigger batch reporting requirement here? That sort of workshopping phase helps us and our customers understand exactly what the platform is going to be used for in the future. And then a key one really is people, identifying those key stakeholders and business owners. So how do we get that ownership out into the business, but also how do we foster some acceptance and adoption of the strategy as well, that actually we've not gone away and given a sort of a blinkered view from the technical point of view of what our data and AI strategy should be. We've involved the business from day zero, and they've helped influence the strategy and how it's been formulated as well. And then ultimately that comes on to the biggest area, and that's really where we engage with our customers in the sort of the workshop phase to understand the use cases. How are people using data today? What are those manual processes that are out there? What are the missing insights that they've not got? And that really helps form a data strategy, which ultimately leads to a roadmap in terms of technical implementation. So, okay, we're starting here with no modern data platform. How do we get to the end where we've realized the use cases and are potentially starting to explore those AI use cases that will be out in the business without a doubt? And then finally onto the AI readiness piece. So yeah, are you ready for the era of AI? Are there source systems that you've got internally that lend themselves better to AI today than others? That's part of the sort of, I guess, the exploratory phase of the data and AI strategy. How ready are you for AI? We appreciate the sensitive data that's within the industry. Just exposing AI to all of that data is obviously going to be a massively perceived risk internally. So we appreciate that, understanding, are there some sort of more narrow use cases within the business today that we can focus on and start your AI journey? Like I said before, it's a balancing point between formulating a perfect strategy, but then also being able to execute against it technically and demonstrate value back to the business. So I'm just going to touch on each pillar briefly and some of the sort of key challenges and how we address them when we're engaging with customers on a data and AI strategy engagement. So the first one really is that connecting to data sources, so that integration and accessibility piece that we spoke about earlier. So obviously a data platform is only ever going to be as successful as the data that it can ingest. So tools like Fabric that have got, like I said, a myriad of connectors and features like data mirroring shortcuts out of the box mean that we can overcome some of these challenges really easily. But yeah, that integration and accessibility is a key one that we need to address at the start of a strategy. And again, this isn't a one size fits all, as is no strategy. Obviously, it varies from customer to customer, but obviously we run into the same source systems and key ingestion points across a number of customers in the FSI industry, but there's always the odd curveball that we run into in terms of can we get to that data. And again, it's an opportunity to say, look, is there a real-time need here versus a right time sort of batch dashboard approach, and we can start to address things like data lineage and auditability as well, obviously key within the industry that we're looking at today in order to understand where the data's come from, who's got access to it, and how it's being used. Other challenges that we often face where a modern data platform like Fabric can start to help you overcome it is if you think back to a more traditional sort of data platform like SQL Server, for example, and a data warehouse, that was great talking to structured data sources, other relational databases. When you started to get into the semi-structured and unstructured, that's where you then had to start looking at other tools to supplement the sort of the core warehouse, whether that was other tools to go and ingest the data into it or even to manipulate it ready for visualization. But the technology that Fabric lives on, One Lake, like Dom mentioned earlier, is really the bedrock of Fabric and can consume any data from structured through to unstructured. So you know that a modern data platform like Fabric, you've got the ability to land any data. It might be that you're only looking at structured data as part of your initial strategy, but you can almost guarantee that as soon as you've satisfied those demands, that then obviously semi-structured, whether it's API calls, for example, or maybe it's unstructured data in terms of some multimedia or documents within the organization will come into scope. So you're safe in the knowledge that Fabric's the platform to go and land that data and be future-proof, but also that AI era ready as well to really leverage that data that you've got within the business. Like I said earlier, data security and governance is often overlooked. So at the data strategy stage, it's a great way of sort of drawing a focus back in on it, not only from a technical perspective, but also across the organization as well. And a benefit with engaging with Transparity is that we've got practices that align closely with the verticals within Microsoft. So we've got a dedicated Azure and security practice within there as well. So even though the skill set and the expertise may not live within the data and AI practice, we can lean on the wider practices for that input. And that needs to obviously be considered from day zero, like we've said before. And the same with the governance side of things as well. So we've got the Azure and the infrastructure practice as well as the security guys, but also we've got a adoption and change management practice within Transparity as well. So a lot of the data governance is about getting that data culture and literacy out there in the organization. And again, with some of the more sort of wider encompassing strategies that we've helped customers deliver, ACM has been part of that as well to really get the sort of the buy-in into the organization to make the strategy, or to give the strategy every success at being sort of embedded and actually delivering the value that the business wants out of it. So that's the data piece. Onto obviously platform. I'm not going to dwell on this too much because obviously we've already heard about some of the power of Fabric, and I'm sure some of you are potentially already investigating it or using it. I think an element that differentiates us from other partners when it comes to Fabric delivery is the Transparity Fabric framework. So this is a framework that's been developed across a number of years, starting back with a SQL Server version that then evolved into a Python one, that then evolved into Synapse and Databricks, and obviously now Fabric as well. And really it's a metadata-driven framework that is data describing data. So how do we go and talk to this common data source that we always talk to? SQL Server dynamics, for example? How do we go and talk to that? And rather than reinventing the wheel with each customer, we use our framework to go and accelerate that, because we appreciate that moving data from a source system into Fabric, whilst it adds some value because it's centralizing the data, it doesn't really add the value or the business value that you guys want to see. So we much prefer to accelerate that using our solution accelerator in terms of the Fabric framework, and then spend more time on the visualization, the transformation, and the modeling side of things that actually demonstrates value back to the business from both a technical investment in, say, a Fabric platform, but also engaging with a partner like Transparity. So you benefit from all of the hard yards done on previous customer projects. And as Stuart said at the beginning, we're the UK leading partner in this. So we've done, I think, 50 plus now of these engagements. So there's a lot of learning and experience there that you guys will benefit from day zero in terms of when we start to look at that Fabric implementation. And really, why do we take the metadata driven approach? So I've said already that accelerator, being able to make sure that we spend the time on the valuable areas rather than just moving data from A to B, but it also gives us a really consistent approach across every customer. So we've got a practice of 35 data engineers and consultants. They're all very familiar with a framework orientated fashion. So actually you've got access to all of those. You'll be engaged with a technical delivery team, but actually anybody could effectively be able to jump onto your solution and help out and provide that cover. And it also lowers the barrier for entry as well. The metadata driven approach is data going into a table, which a lot of tech data and incumbent teams have obviously already got exposure to. So it's a less of a learning curve than adopting maybe, say, Databricks, for example, which is much more sort of code driven than the framework approach. Obviously, we mentioned Databricks there, and I appreciate that some of you may already have been exploring Databricks and are looking at potentially Fabric as an alternative. Actually, I think it's potentially a case of why not both. So a real sort of use case we see is where a lot of data engineering effort has potentially been spent in Databricks, and actually they're now looking at how do we go beyond the really sort of mature data engineering experiences within Databricks, and then how do we start to model and visualize that data, and that's where Fabric can obviously come into play as well. So I think the real differentiator between Fabric and Databricks is that barrier to entry. So Fabric obviously much more of a low code ETL driven. There'll be some, if you've got familiarity with the likes of SQL, Sys, Synapse, for example, it's a natural cutover into Fabric, whereas obviously Databricks is that much more sort of code first development via notebooks in Spark SQL or PySpark. But yeah, typically that's where we see a decision point that if you've already started to explore Databricks and have got an engineering effort in it, it doesn't mean that you need to write off Fabric, that actually it can complement Databricks by using the data it ingests to then use obviously the really powerful tools like Power BI that it's got in there, that's obviously class leading in terms of its visualization tools that it's got access to. Then we come on to people. So like I said at the beginning, this is the real sort of key sort of pillar to a data strategy, identifying those people that are going to really help you formulate and embed a data strategy, and obviously ultimately adopt the technology that you're looking at implementing as part of that strategy as well. I'm sure some of you will recognize some of these key sort of personas, but these are the ones that we typically engage with across all types of industries, including obviously FSI. And like I said, it's important to get a mix of people and personas at the strategy sort of formulation stage, because if not, you can potentially have a lens that's skewed towards one area or one function, like I said earlier. And then just to break down the sort of typical people and personas that we talk to. So, like I said, stakeholders, the sort of C-level guys that are making the ultimately owning the investment and the data strategy as a whole. But really it's the users that we then need to engage with at that sort of workshopping phase. So tell us how you're using the data today, tell us your issues and the challenges that you've got to help formulate a strategy and technical delivery roadmap around it. And delivery team as well, obviously, oops, 1 second. Obviously, we've got a capable technical delivery team in the 35 consultants we've got in data today, but appreciate that there'll be some people on the call today that are in a data technical delivery role today. But as Transparity, we're about formulating longer term partnerships. So working with incumbent teams is something that we do across across a lot of our customers, and actually being an extension to that team is really how we see ourselves. So whether it's burst capacity or picking up an area of technology that you might not have the experience or exposure in, it's about a collaborative delivery rather than Transparity delivering a bit of a black box and saying, right, here you go, this fulfills your data strategy. It's about working with internal delivery teams across the board. So that's the key pillars of the data strategy. I just wanted to touch on some of the typical use cases that we're seeing within the FSI industry. So know your customer is a key one that we're seeing time and time again, and this isn't just specific to the FSI industry. It could be across a multitude of industries that have obviously got a sort of a customer lens to them. So typically we're starting off with disparate data, lots of different versions of a customer across the board, and some may agree and some may not. The future state is really looking at that, centralizing the data, using a tool like Fabric, building those dashboards on top to start to give you those insights into how customers behave and potentially how you might target them for future products or services. And then on to the results side of things. So in terms of, sort of real time, know your customer updates and continuous monitoring. So it's not a one-off exercise that happens once and then you forget about it. It's a dashboard that's automatically updating that you can continually go back to and really focus on how do we target these customers in the future? How do we get the most value out of them? Which obviously then leads on to the profitability side of things. So I've said before that a number of these data strategy and even the sort of data projects can start with a bit of a finance lens, and often forecasting and sort of the tracking of profitability can be spreadsheet heavy. So it's about removing the manual exercise, about going to get data into a spreadsheet to then to manipulate it, and about putting the guardrails and controls that Fabric can bring along. So automating that data ingestion, automating the modeling and the transformation of the data to then produce Power BI dashboards off the back of it. It then also gets you into that AI space as well, where you can start to use machine learning to do predictive forecasts rather than it being sort of buried in somebody's head, and that risk that comes in terms of that sort of key dependency on that person, starting to get some of that predictive analytics in play, so that you're not just sort of reliant on one person and their knowledge of what's come before. And then ultimately that results in obviously better forecasting, better results, and ultimately better profitability. Another one very similar to the know your customer is the sort of the customer 360 and the personalized side of things within banking. So again, starting off on a very common ground, siloed data. Doing any customer segmentation or analysis is really cumbersome, takes getting data out of multiple data sources and putting them into one, matching of data, all of that really sort of manual effort that makes it an exercise that either you've not got time or the resource to do on a regular basis. So unifying that into one lake and into Microsoft Fabric is obviously a key part of avoiding some of those manual processes that we've just spoken about. And then it gives you the ability to actually start to look at potentially real-time analytics in something like Fabric and its direct lake mode within Power BI. So can I go and query what a customer's been looking at or how they've been behaving and potentially target them almost real time, rather than it being a monthly exercise that maybe the opportunity there has disappeared and is no longer actually there for you to target that customer. And again, lays that future state for being sort of AI powered customer insight. So are there some AI or some agentic AI in terms of some automations that you can get off the back of there so that you can actually target customers in real time, ultimately leading on to that customer retention and upsell opportunity. Another key sort of focus that we're seeing within FSI as well, and where Fabric is really helping us achieve this, is within the sort of the claims analytics and fraud detection piece. So again, current state, starting off in the typical fashion, data in disparate data sources around the business doesn't necessarily integrate and talk to each other. That maybe there's a number of sources that you need in order to detect fraud, for example, or to be able to be confident on that detection. Actually bring those into a central lake house within Fabric allows you to then start to have all of that data in one place, so you can start to build out anomaly detection processes in machine learning, for example, and then starting to visualize those in tools like Power BI. Maybe it's a case management dashboard, for example, for fraud teams to come in and continually refresh and look at what their next sort of investigation should be. Ultimately, it's about reducing the time to obviously detect those potential frauds, and obviously the time to the call to action that it takes for the teams to go and investigate those. And as your data maturity and platform starts to mature, maybe it's handing off some of those decisions into AI and agentic AI in order to be able to go and automate some of those follow-up processes or escalation paths. And the final one that I was going to touch on is obviously a key area that we start with a lot of these data engagements, especially in FSI, is that visibility that executives and sort of the C-suite have in terms of their reporting. So removing that pressure of data silos and people having to go and collate that data manually to produce reports that are open to risk because of the manual processes that are involved in them, centralizing it into Fabric, building a mature Power BI dashboard or reporting suite around it, so ultimately the data can be delivered to the end users, whether it's executives, senior leadership team, whoever it might be, so that they're empowered to go and make timely decisions off the back of that. And with that, I'll hand over to Stuart to talk through how we engage in some of the data services that we offer.
Brilliant, thank you for that, Luke. That was that was really good. So I think what we wanted to cover was how we really take this to the customer. We've got engagement models really with how we develop long-term data strategies and how we implement an evolving data solution. It all starts foundationally with what we typically call a data wayfinder. So this is Microsoft funded. We'll get into this actually a little bit more, because that actually plays into the commercial offering that we've got for you guys. But a data wayfinder essentially is a kind of a heavy discovery, like assessment phase, which then deploys an enterprise landing zone. So whether that's a new enterprise landing zone if you're already in Azure, or at least reviews the one that you've got. It deploys Fabric as a most viable product, and it deploys for Purview. And then we develop that future roadmap so that we can deliver multiple ingestions, for example, more complex data services over a period of time. So it's really working with you to develop that strategy, and that can be done either with a fixed project, so a fixed price project, which is it's kind of sprint methodology, or it can be done as what we consider an E2E service over a longer period of time, working with you and augmenting sort of kind of team augmentation and working with you. And it goes round in that loop kind of continuously, depending on how far you want to go with it. And there's kind of the main differences between those two engagement models. So E2E really, it's delivered typically a guaranteed minimum daily pace. So monthly pace. So like I said, it augments your existing internal capability. So work with your teams to actually develop that out. It's based on your priorities, and those priorities can change. So if you in the first 6 months, for example, wanted to deliver a number of different new ingestions and data sources, that your priorities might change as time goes on, and the skill sets that you have access to within that service would be a data architect, DBA, data engineer, data scientist, DevOps, integration specialists. It can require evergreen skill sets, agile project management approach. And like I said before, it's an interchangeable backlog service. So we can actually provide it across all of our different services. You don't have to have it pigeonholed specifically for data, but if you want to use it for data, then it can develop your data strategy and your data evolution. Then we obviously have the defined project engagement. That's far more traditional in its approach. That's fixed price or time and materials pricing options. We define what the outcomes are from day one. So it's not like the E2E where you can change your backlog and develop it over time and change your mind. define project engagement clearly is defining what that outcome is from the start, and that's much more of that waterfall project management approach, sprint delivery. And the project is delivered and the value is realized in the shortest time possible, but it is a lot less flexible about how you use the time. And typically what we see is with an E2E transformation, and this is based on 8 days per month, is that we'd form the data strategy to begin with. Within the first year, we'd have the data platform stood up, descriptive diagnostic analytics and use cases would be started, data ingestion would be completed, Power BI dashboards and reports would be up and running. You'd then move into what we'd consider like a focused phase. So it'd be prescriptive analytics use cases, integration services, predictive analytics use cases. And then as you move into the sort of second, third year, you become much more transformational, and you can move into the AI and kind of ML adoption phase of this. You've got ML ops, AI and ML throughout the business DNA. And ultimately what we see with this is the typical journey that businesses take when they're doing it. It doesn't have to be like this, but this is a typical journey that businesses take, because AI, whilst it is absolutely bolstered by good data and having a great direct data strategy and good quality and being able to trust it, you don't have to do it necessarily in this order. It just helps if you do, I think. And then I'm going to pass back over to Luke very quickly. He's going to talk you through funding
Yes.
and how we can benefit from emptying Microsoft's pockets. I'm sure Tom will is to hear.
So yeah, as a partner with the right accreditations that Stuart ran through at the beginning of today's session, we get access to Microsoft funding, in particular the Azure Innovate funding. So not every partner that you engage with that is a Microsoft partner will have access to these, but because we've got those right accreditations, we do. So we can leverage 2 pots of funding when it comes to exploring technologies like Fabric, Databricks, or even AI use cases as an example as well. And they split into 2 pots. So the very first pot is a $10,000 sort of funding pot that we can access, so that you can start to explore Fabric, for example, as a technology. And typically we frame that around an MVP, a minimal viable product, or a proof of concept, in order to go and demonstrate Fabric as a platform, its ability to ingest, transform, visualize, model data, and hopefully answer a business use case that you might have off the back of it. If you're then happy with the Fabric platform and what it can deliver, we can then also access additional funding in terms of the deployment funding. That's t-shirt sized based, so it will be based on how big your data platform potentially is in the future over a 12-month period. So as you start to move from an MVP into more of a productionized state, naturally you'll start to consume more Fabric compute on the Fabric platform, and that's what Microsoft measures against. So based on that size, we can access between $5,000 to $50,000 in additional funding. We've also got a promotion on at the moment, which is a 3-2-1 data assessment. We appreciate that a number of you will have existing data platforms, maybe an existing data strategy that you want to take a look at. Really, this is a 3 days, 2K, and you get a consultant to come in, and we can spend some time assessing maybe your existing platform, how that translates to something like Fabric, for example, or actually testing some of your strategy. Another one is, am I getting the most out of my Fabric capacity that I may have in play at the moment? Am I getting the most out of my Power BI footprint? So really, this is an opportunity for you to engage with Transparity, for us to better understand your environment and produce some tangible output out the back of it, so that you guys can then action either through technical delivery, or maybe it's a refocus on strategy, whatever it might be. And I'll hand back to Stuart for the final offering.
Yeah, and what we were talking about at the start, we wanted to end today with a promotional offer for those who haven't started on your data journey. So this is very much for the businesses that are right at the start of that. So what we do is we combine the Microsoft Innovate program, which can be between 10 to 50K, with Transparity's own accelerator funding, which is $10,000, which is something exclusive to the attendees of this event, by the way, and it does expire in 60 days, I must say. But we're offering to build eligible businesses a free of charge Fabric MVP with a broader data roadmap to grow the platform. So we'll be following up later this week for those that are interested. And to be totally honest and upfront, Transparity are not a partner who are just looking to take some funding. We're really looking to work with customers to build a strategic partnership. For us, this is an opportunity to demonstrate the strength of the technology, equally demonstrate our own expertise to you as well, so you can trust us as a partner. And then with that in mind, that is it for today. Genuinely, guys, thank you very much for joining. I know that finding an hour out of your diary is tricky, so that we appreciate your time, and we also really appreciate your attention and your commitment to the polls as well. Big thank you to our guest speakers, Dom and Luke, and we'd love to have some follow-up conversations with you, get your feedback, understand where you are as a business, any challenges that you may have that may be specific to you, whether there's some low-hanging fruit, high-impact use cases that we can deliver for you, and hopefully work together to deliver a world-class data strategy. So we'll be following up with any questions in the chat, sharing the link to the session. If you wanted to revisit the detail in the session, we can share the link to the YouTube channel. But thank you very much for your time, and enjoy the rest of the day, guys. Thank you very much.